welcome. I'd like to open up the public meeting for Gordon Clifford Swinson for an application for a beneficial land application of domestic septage, the registration 710926. My name is Tara Driscoll and I'm with the TCQ. Before we get started, I'd like to make some introductions. Next to me is Tim Reedy. He's also with the TCQ. He's an attorney working on this application. Next to him is Faroj Mohara. He's a team leader within our water permitting. And next to him is BJ Shalice, who's the gentleman responsible for reviewing the permit. Also working on the permit application review is April Ho and Amanda Perani. They're both on the first row. April is a geologist and Amanda is an agronomist. Also with us tonight we have Joel Anderson. He's our San Antonio Regional Manager. And with him is Kathy Roper and Chris Juke, who in the back corner. They're both inspectors with the San Antonio office. Brad Patterson was out front signing you in. Jim Fernandez is back here doing sound tonight. They both work with me. They're helping me out today. For the applicant, we have Randy Wilbur, who's an attorney. And next to him is Don Rosshuber, who is the consultant, the engineer on the application. I'd also like to recognize that we have Mayor Maria Blanche from the city of Nixon. We have County Commissioner Paul Thiel and County Commissioner Larry Wiley also with us. The format of the meeting, the applicant is going to give a short presentation, PowerPoint. Then BJ is going to give an overview of what it is he looks at. Yes, sir.
You missed, we have our county judge and his wife here.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
Also, you have another commissioner.
Commissioner, I was standing out there trying to gather up those sign-in sheets. I apologize.
Commissioner Weiss from Gonzales County down.
Thank you. Is there anyone else before I continue? Okay. So they're going to do a short presentation. TCEQ staff is going to explain what it is that we look at when we review this type of application. And then Tim is going to tell us where we are procedurally with the application, where we've gotten to this point, where we have to go. And then we're going to open it up. I believe the mayor is going to say a few words, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. And that'll be your opportunity to ask questions either of the applicant or the TCEQ staff. We'll do that for a short while, take a quick break, and then we're going to do the formal comment, and that's where you indicated on your sign-in sheet. I'll go back through this as we move through the night, but let's go ahead and start with the presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Icon. Good evening. On behalf of Gordon Swinson, the applicant that's here on the public meeting agenda tonight, it welcomes everybody, and I sure appreciate y'all coming out. I'm Don Rosshuber. I'm the engineer for the applicant. Started this process about 10 months ago, maybe a little longer ago, to complete an application for beneficial use of septic application to approximately 298 acres of land in Wilson County, not far from the city of Nixon, in Gonzales County. And it sits on that 298 acres is part of and parcel of roughly a 401 acre tract. I'll kind of explain that here in a minute. The process itself is a fairly technical process. It's a formal application. This is one of 3 processes, if you would, that when you deal and looking at septage, and septage is really this, what the septage we're talking about and what's defined in the application is residential septic tank irreducible solids. It's solids that are in residential septic tanks that is pumped out by licensed haulers. It's regulated by the state of Texas, regulated by the EPA. We follow certain specific guidelines promulgated by the TCEQ, completing the application, which involves field investigations, it involves site investigations, it involves calculations of what's called agronomic rates. That's uptake rates of plants have in terms of nitrogen, nutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus, and carbon, and so forth. The nitrogen is sort of the control on that. And then once the application is completed and submitted, the TCEQ staff does a technical or administrative review on the application. Once it's administratively complete, and then they perform what's called a technical review. I think this is part of that technical review process tonight, the way I understand the overall process. I think from this process, I will have probably Faroj or someone can explain what happens from tonight. What I want to kind of focus on a little bit is on the applications and parts of it, and that is that these. Sort of a trap. septage, again, what we're talking about, that's going to be part of that's part of this app. That is the application. Is residential. How many of y'all have septic tanks or been on septic tanks? I've been on one for many, many years. Not today, but I've been on one for many, many years. As you know, that septic tank is just really an aerobic process. It uses bacteria and microorganisms that do not live on oxygen. It lives in a non-oxygen environment. That's what septic means. And that those bacteria and organisms breaks down sewage from the residential houses and so forth. And you finally get a buildup of what's called irreducible solids. And every 2 to 3, 4, 5, I think I even went 10 years before I pumped mine one time, have to have that irreducible solids removed from the tank so you can put the tank back into operation. So what we're talking about is just hauling that under the state regulations, septic from residential structures. What's not involved in this, we'll be real clear and real emphasize this, what's not involved in this is any industrial waste or medical waste or commercial waste or even raw sewage from municipalities. It is simply and directly septage that's generated by residential structures. And none of the others are allowed to come, even chemical toilets. Waste from chemical toilets is not allowed to be pumped out and delivered to land application sites such as this one. Just kind of emphasize, I guess I was talking about 1 to 3 year time frame when people have to pump out their septic tanks and have them hauled. This is one of the processes. I think there's probably 3 processes. There's land application, beneficial use land application, such as in part of this application. There are areas in the country that develop septic wastewater treatment plants because of the very remote nature of septic tanks, and that it's very difficult to have a localized or regionalized facility that's cost effective. You can haul some of this if you find a municipality or even a private owner of a wastewater treatment plant. Some will take septage, but septage is fairly a stable materials, reducible solids that's in the septic tanks that a lot of wastewater treatment plants, especially missiles, do not want to accept septage as inflow to their plant. So the land application process is a viable process recognized by the EPA and TCEQ in terms of a fertilizer that can be applied to it, because what's left in the septage is fairly good nutrients. And the idea of the application is you apply the septage to a field, and in this case, Mr. Swenson has hay croppage. He grows hay out, raises hay out on his property. He applied it within the center pivot systems that he has out there. And that application is designed to apply at such a rate that you don't have excess nutrients left over. In other words, the vegetation itself takes up the nutrients themselves that are available from the septage. The local issues that we've kind of compiled, I guess I didn't introduce Randy. I just moderator introduced Randy Wilbur, who's with me tonight. He's also available to answer questions. He's the attorney for Gordon Swenson. The local issues we kind of identified going through the materials from the public comments that were received in writing to TCEQ is that there's concern about the land application being too close to water wells, groundwater protection issues, surface water protection issues, general public health concerns about pathogens and vector controls, traffic concerns, economic value, impact on economic value of properties, and also some concerns raised about a ban or reference to a ban of septic applications in the state of Florida. So I'd like to address briefly each of these particular concerns. First of all, in terms of proximity of wells, identified 5 wells that are in the application area. There are 2 on the site, 1 private domestic well, 1 big large irrigation well that supplies water to 3 center pivot systems. And then there was 3 wells, maybe 4 wells off-site, so I guess there's a total of 6 wells. 4 wells off-site. The rules require setbacks or buffer zones between wells, 150 feet from private wells, 500 feet from public water supply wells. There's no public water supply wells within 500 feet of the property. I think Nixon completed a well recently about half a mile away, back to the main highway, about half a mile, maybe 3/4 mile away. So we meet or exceed all the criteria in terms of buffer zones for public water supply wells. In terms of groundwater protection, the that's handled by several ways in that the main underlying aquifer is the Carrizo Wilcox in this area. The crops, the cropping use of the available nutrients is fertilizer. I mean, it's designed once you apply it at low enough rates that all the nutrients get taken up by the vegetation, so there's not any excess nutrients left over that would percolate or filtrate down into the groundwater itself. And I might also say, when septic in the septic tank is, it's in there 3 or 4 or 5 years, and it's in there a long time. And as it's in that over that length of time, the pathogens, and that's in itself is a pathogen and vector control, because those tend to eliminate the pathogens and minimize the vector controls that are needed that while that septic is in the septic tank itself. It applies, again, then when you apply it to the field. The other groundwater protection, we have the buffer zones. We can't have any sinkholes or any cavities that would be surface water recharge cavities within 200 feet. We didn't identify any on the property at all. And I mentioned the public water supply wells. The surface water protections, the TCEQ requires buffer zones from state water, and that's any surface water. As you know, if you've been farmers and ranchers, or anything that flows in the defined water course becomes state water. We have to maintain 200-foot buffers. We meet all those or exceed it. There are 3 or 4 ponds on the site, sock ponds, and we have buffer zones set back from that. These buffer zones have to be permanently marked with a permanent marker, so that when the application is applied out there, that if they cannot violate or encroach into the buffer zone themselves. Also, in terms of surface water protection, there are regulations, and part of the permit itself is that you can't apply this septic when it's flooding, and from practically you can't get a truck out there to distribute the septic when it's raining, because it's clay soils, there's not defined roads, so that limits itself. So you can't apply it when it's raining or you have flooding conditions. You can't apply it on areas that have greater than 8% slope, and there are some little swales out there, some relief out there, but it's roughly 4% or less slope relief in the whole area, so it does meet that criteria exceeded. You can't apply it when the ground is real saturated. You can't have runoff. You can apply it at a rate that has runoff, and so part of the draft permit that was issued by the TCEQ limits that you can't have ponding or any runoff from the property. So that gives you protection in terms of surface water protections that are propagated by the rules and actually are propagated in the application itself. The health concerns on pathogen and vector controls, I've addressed that somewhat already. The application rates, of course the pathogens and vector controls are first kind of controlled, if you would, and take care of in the septic tank because of a long residence time. But once it's applied to the fields, the best management practice is that they basically get destroyed. One of your best disinfection is the sunlight. Will break up a lot of this stuff and destroy it. The other limits in terms of vector control and pathogen is the state limits. You can't harvest any food crops from an area. You can't have farm animals graze on the property. You can't have public access to the property for 30 days after application and so forth. This is private property. There will be no public access to the property. There's no food crops raised on this property. There's no large animals in terms of cattle or horses that graze on this property whatsoever. It's all for agricultural hay grazing and hay raising operations. In terms of traffic concerns, the TCEQ doesn't really regulate that. When you look at the application rates and given the size of the property, there will be some traffic increases, out there. But I think it becomes really self-limiting when you look at the availability of septic and the area that can be collected actually by a licensed hauler and brought here. I don't think you will ever reach a situation where you have maximum utilization, maximum application of the rates that will really allow on this type of soils. So there will be some traffic increase. I don't think it's going to be a huge problem from what I've seen, but the TCEQ doesn't regulate that. Also, as they don't regulate economic concerns or value questions in terms of the value of the property. And quickly on the Florida ban that I've seen some literature on and correspondences on. The Florida ban, the way I read the literature, understand there is not a ban today in effect in Florida on septic. That there's a ban that would be in 2016, and that the issue there is one that focuses on economic issues of cost. That the law that was passed by Florida that has a big economic issue because they were going to require people who own septic tanks pump them quite frequently. And so that raised some cost issues, so I know they're addressing those. But to my knowledge, there's no ban today and no ban regarding any environmental concerns. So that's basically the concerns, addressing the concerns. Again, the application, we have a poster board in the out in the lobby. We could bring it in and see a little closer look. But the property itself is a 401-acre tract of land. And we've identified where all the existing on-site and off-site water wells are. These areas, there's a 50-foot buffer along all the property line. There's over a 400-foot setback from the tributary of Elm Creek that's on the south side of the property. Didn't the FEMA doesn't show any 100-year floodplain on the property. The 100-year floodplain begins in this lower area, just off this USGS portion of this map, this USGS map, and down in the Elm Creek area itself. And all the ponds, the local ponds that are on site, we've offset it by the requirements of 200 feet or 400 feet, depending on where that is and how it has been grouped. Also, there's one residence here. When I did the application, there's a 750-foot buffer from the residence that captures the well, and these off-site wells out here that's off-site and across the, this is Farm Road 483, I believe it's 483 here. I believe Mr. Swenson has moved in a mobile home that's on this side of the property, and we requested from the TCU if we could do an exemption since he owns that particular mobile home. But that's just a new residence been added out there. So that is the application. Randy, want to add any other comments for that? We're glad to answer questions at that point in the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, BJ is the gentleman responsible for reviewing the application, and he'll go over briefly what it is he looks at during his review.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Vijay Chalis. I am a permit coordinator for the municipal permits team. I will briefly go over the permitting process. This application was submitted on October 9, 2012, and it was declared administrative complete on November 14, 2012. The application review process includes a site assessment conducted by TCQ San Antonio Region Office, a groundwater review to identify the groundwater and geological characteristics of the application area, and an agronomist review of the suitability of the soils at the site.
Excuse me, sir. Could you slow down a little bit?
No
one will be able to respond to you because we can't understand you.
And the application is currently under technical review by the staff. Gordon Clifton Swenson has applied to the TCQ for a new application of domestic septic registration 710926 to authorize the beneficial land application of domestic septic at the rate of 76,923 gallons per acre per year on 298.3 acres of application area. Annual application rate of domestic septic was calculated based on the amount of nitrogen in the soils at the application site and the amount of nitrogen needed by the crop or vegetation grown on the application area. This permit will not authorize the discharge of pollutants into water in the state. The operation and maintenance of this land application site must be in accordance with Title 30, Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 312, and Title 40 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 503, as they relate to the land application for beneficial use, and all applicable local and county ordinance must also follow. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim Reedy, as I said earlier, he is an attorney with the agency, and he'll explain the procedural aspects, where we've come with this application, where we have to go.
Good evening. Thank you again. My name is Tim Reedy, and like Tara said, I'm going to let you know a little bit about where we've been with this registration application, where we are now, and where we're going from here. First and foremost, I wanted to talk about how members of the local community are informed of these types of applications. For new registrations, TCEQ rules require that mailed notice be sent to all adjacent landowners that are provided on the in the application on the adjacent landowners map, and also that public notice be mailed to the county judge where the proposed site is located. Those of you who filled out a card tonight and provided your address, y'all will be added to the chief clerk's mailing list and will receive all future public notices regarding this application. The public notice that goes out is called the Notice of Receipt, an Application and Declaration of Administrative Completeness. And what it means for an application to be administratively complete is essentially we're checking to make sure that all the required parts of the application are there and have been submitted by the applicant. This registration application was declared administratively complete on November 14th of 2012, and the Office of the Chief Clerk mailed the public notice of this registration on November 30th, 2012. Now, right now we're in what's called the comment period. The comment period is the time to raise any concerns that you have with this particular application. The official comment period begins when the Chief Clerk mails out this public notice, so the comment period began at the end of November of 2012, and typically it runs for 30 days, so it would have ended in December. However, because of this public meeting and the interest generated by this application, the public comment period will end at the close of formal comments tonight. So if you have concerns, now is the time to raise those concerns, and I want to emphasize the point that this application is still under technical review. So any new information received here tonight during tonight's public meeting will be taken into consideration by the Executive Director when making his decision to approve or deny this application. I saw a hand go up. If you don't mind, I know after this we're going to do the informal question and answer session, so if you'll just defer those questions until that time. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was after the technical review, what's going to happen. So after the technical review of this application is complete, the Executive Director will decide whether to approve or deny this application for registration. Once that happens, a final decision letter will be mailed to persons on the Chief Clerk's mailing list. And at the same time, what's going to happen when that final decision letter goes out is that the Executive Director's Office will prepare a written response to all public comments received during the comment period, kind of explaining the review process and how we reached the Executive Director's final decision. When that mailing goes out, it will also include instructions on how to file a motion to overturn the Executive Director's decision. So what is a motion to overturn? A motion to overturn is a request that the TCEQ's commissioners review the Executive Director's action on an application. And so a motion to overturn can be as simple as a letter stating the reasons why you think the Executive Director's decision needs to be re-reviewed by the Commission. The deadline to file that motion to overturn is 23 days from the date that the Chief Clerk mails the final decision letter. What can happen is that the Commission may request briefing on the issues raised in that motion to overturn, and may schedule the motion to overturn to be considered at one of the Commissioners' regularly scheduled agenda meetings. However, if the Commissioners do not act on a motion to overturn and do not extend the time to act on a motion to overturn within 45 days of the Chief Clerk mailing that final decision letter, then the motion to overturn will be considered overruled by operation of law. Now, state law also provides that a person may file a petition in district court for judicial review of an action by the Commission. That petition must be filed in Travis County District Court within 30 days after the effective date of the permit or registration. And even if you request judicial review, before you do that, you still must exhaust your administrative remedies. So you can file it concurrently with your motion to overturn.
Thank you. I know that was a lot of information. We're going to get into question and answer. But first, Mayor Blanche would like to say a few things.
I kind of hope for a podium. I shake, so I'm going to sit down. I don't mean to be rude because I'm going to read this from my heart.
Do you want to? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. At my age, I kind of shake a little, and I'm afraid I brought my paper. And I have to read this because if I don't, then I'm going to get off task.
There you go.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Maria Blanche, and I'm the mayor of Nixon, Texas. We would like to thank each of our concerned citizens for being here this evening. It's wonderful that you all showed up. I just can't express how much I appreciate it. Thanks especially to Wilson County for allowing this important meeting to be held here. Also to all the guests from TCEQ. Doris Sanchez was fantastic with us. She kept us informed. Anything we asked, she came back to us, so I would appreciate y'all letting her know how we appreciate that. Y'all showed interest and concern, and you've displayed this through this whole process. News media, we appreciate all of you that have been there also. Just a quick few special thank yous to J.D. Story, his father Dr. Story, Superintendent Kathy Booth, for all you have done to help bring this issue to where we are tonight. This past November, I became 74 years of age and was really enjoying a wonderful time in my life, but very quickly came to a screeching halt. I received an alarming call from Mr. Wonderful J.D. Story. He and his family helped us get this ball rolling to stop what was about to happen to Nixon in the area. I was presented with information and pictures that were possibly going to be dumped on our Nixon. Dumped very near the new water well number 6. As I looked at those colored pictures of human waste that could be dumped on us, I became sick to my stomach. The more I read, the more ill I became. Deeper and more research produced more disgusting pictures and very frightening information. The thought of such things being dumped where people live was unthinkable. My next discovery was even more disappointing. Recognizing the name of the person applying for such a thoughtless act was our Gordon Swenson, a person who has a business in our Nixon. All who know me have rarely seen me angry. Needless to say, as you can tell, I'm angry. Mr. Swenson and I will both be dead and gone before some of the long-range effects of this disposed waste are even deemed harmless. This could affect not only humans, but all of God's creatures that we love and cherish. Who's to say this could even destroy things above ground? This gentleman and I are at an age where the almighty dollar should not be placed above the health of others. The end result of some of these actions can and will hurt others, Mr. Swenson. At this time, I personally pray that your intent is not one of financial gain. Please look deep in your soul to see the danger you could be causing the citizens of Nixon and our friends down the way. Find it in your heart to withdraw this application for the well-being of others. Some years ago, a highly regarded man named President Reagan, and you all know what he said. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down those walls. And I'm saying from the citizens of Nixon, Mr. Swenson, tear up application 710926.
Yeah.
To anybody that would have a question either for the applicant or for the TCQ. And we are recording this meeting, and so that everyone can hear, if you do have a question, I'd like to ask you to step up to the microphone. So,
Terry, right?
Tim. I'm Tara.
Memi at your office, when I spoke to her today, said that the comment period would be extend beyond this evening, just for information. So, if you guys could extend it a little bit, that might be good.
I think you should be on.
Okay. The comment period has been open since November 30th of 2012, and we've kept it running long past when we're regulatorily required to keep the comment period open because there has been such interest here. We were hoping that at the end of this public meeting, we could take the public comments received here tonight, both written and submitted to Brad Patterson, and take that and have that be the stopping point so that we could continue our technical review and respond to those comments in writing.
Okay, one of the reasons I'm asking for that is that it was my understanding that there was a question and answer period we could ask the applicant about questions that we now have answers to. So we're learning new information that may give rise to new questions and may change our responses. So
And the question and answer period is going to take place before the formal comment portion of this meeting. So hopefully, you would have that new information and be able to lodge a formal comment.
All right. So I have questions. Who's going to do the testing of the sewage?
Well, there's required by TC periodic testing, but it would be the testing in terms of soil testing will be done by a certified laboratory as far as the analysis are concerned.
What type of equipment is going to be used?
It'd be the standard procedures propagated by the rules of TCEQ.
So when a vacuum truck arrives, a sample is going to be taken and delivered to a facility and then tested. Results come back, or is it going to be tested on site?
No, because this is septage, they don't test the septage when it's delivered. What they do is they test the soil after it's been applied to the land.
So the septage actually comes in not tested, correct?
Well, we're not talking about industrial waste, we're talking about residential septic.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I thought was a little misleading was that you said it was only for residences. Is it also possible that porta potties are included in that? For example, the blue things are on the Greek sites.
Chemical toilets are not allowed.
That's not my understanding of domestic septic. And portable toilets are included in that.
Portable toilets, yes, but chemical toilets, no.
Okay, portable toilets, like that you might find on the side of a rig.
So,
in the Eagle Ford
blue
area.
water toilets?
Right.
Not allowed.
What's that?
Not allowed, as far as we understand.
That's not my understanding as the definitions of domestic septic. One other thing that was brought up is that there was no large animals on the property. I noticed today at the ranch that there were actually cows on the property. So I thought that was a little misleading also. In fact, we've seen cows out there.
They're not allowed to graze 30 days after.
Use the microphone, so right here.
They're not allowed to graze 30 days after the septic is applied.
Okay, I just heard you say that there were no large animals on the property.
There'll be no large animals that will be on the property within the application area. When I'm at church today with TCU staff, there were several cattle located on the northern part of the property, a separate fenced pasture, which is not part of the application area.
Is it my understanding that properties under control, Mr. Swenson, that may only be divided by a road, for example, need to be outlined on the map?
No, this is the application area. And the application area is limited as 401 acre tract, a subset of that.
Are you aware that there's another tract across the road from it?
Yes, I am.
Control?
Yes, I am.
Are you aware of the rules and application which state that our property boundaries of all contiguous land owned or under the control of the applicant should be shown, and even if it's the boundaries of the adjoining properties, including all sharing property line or separated by a road?
And that's correct, they are. There's an exhibit in the application that shows all adjoining property owners.
Okay. So under the Wilson County, provided by the Wilson County Flood District, FEMA, there's a tract number 16653 and 16558. Are you saying that Mr. Gordon Swenson doesn't own that?
No, sir, not at all.
I don't see them indicated on that map.
Well, there's other maps in the application besides that.
I've looked at all the maps in the application.
The property, in the application, there is a property owner map that's included. And it lists by table and number to the parcel numbers from the Wilson County Appraisal District, the owners of those properties.
Does Mr. Swenson own parcel number 16653 and 16658?
I don't know without looking at the application. I'm not familiar with the numbers. He may or may not. I just don't know that.
It's my understanding that he does, and I've seen him out there working on it on numerous occasions, and it's not listed on that map. And it's also next to the city of Nixon, and also brought it up to the TCQ's attention that that property was not listed in writing.
Mr. Story, they are shown on the landowner map. The ownership is shown for all adjacent properties on the landowner map. It's in the application.
How important is it to the TCQ integrity of data and honesty of data, especially for reporting, for example? Does that come into play with regard to the decision to accept or deny?
What the statements you just made, you've already submitted those in writing? Is that correct?
I have submitted some of those in writing, yes.
That's what Tim was speaking to earlier, is that all of those things come into consideration. They review it, and it's a part of the review, and they take that into consideration, making whether or not they approve the application.
Okay. How much will Mr. Swenson be paid per gallon of the sewage?
I don't know, I have not seen a tariff prepared for that, I don't know.
You don't know?
No, sir.
Is there any other reason he'd be doing this, other than economic gain?
No, it'd be for economic benefit. And plus it's a great fertilizer. You look at the benefits of for growing crops.
And so, it was my understanding by, in speaking to Mr. Swenson, that he was actually going to be the first to do the testing. Is that incorrect?
He may have an employee pull the soil sample and send them in, but that's all again regulated by the TCEQ and following TCEQ procedures. He'll follow all TCEQ required procedures.
And they'll have formal training and certification?
To the extent, yes, to the extent required by TCEQ.
Is the TCEQ aware that the property has been leased for oil exploration to an exploration company?
Are you aware of that? Somebody explain.
There is, you may know about it, you may have heard about the news, called Eagle Shale. And there's actually drilling and exploration activities in the area. And that property, to my understanding, has been leased by Lone Star Resources. Were you aware of that? So they have access to the underneath the surface of the property?
Based on my knowledge, I don't.
You were not aware of that? TCQ was not aware of that? Not disclosed? Are there any special provisions in the lease for Mr. Swenson's property with regard to the application of domestic septic?
I'm not aware of any of these. I don't know.
Are you now aware that the spacing for the Eagle Field number 1 has been reduced to 40 acres? That means that on that property, 400 acres, there can be up to 10 wells. Each well occupying 7 acres of proverbial land, and including runoff and thousands of employees. We've had 2 wells drilled in that place. On one of the wells, just one, we had over 44 pages of trucks entering and leaving. Some of them were vans with 10 people in them. 1,500 plus people visited those sites. 10 wells times 1,500 is 15,000. That's significant public traffic. And you were not made aware of that. Okay. How many gallons of domestic septic per acre are being applied for?
The application rates, of course, have to be 76,000, a little over 76,000 gallons per acre per year.
Let's back up a little bit. There's not a gallonage application rate that's applied for. The way it works is you go and do soil tests, and then you look at the crop that you're going to put out on the property. You calculate the agronomic rate, the maximum agronomic rate, and then you calculate a maximum application rate. That's not necessarily the application rate that's going to use. That's just math showing the maximum application rate. It gets confusing, so I know a lot of people talk about 76,000 gallons, 3,000 trucks, et cetera, 1,300 swimming pools. That's, no one believes that's ever going to happen.
Why not?
Because, first of all, with septic, the availability is a product of transportation costs. You only haul it so far before it becomes uneconomical when you go to a different site. So instead of going to this site, they go to the site in Gonzales, or they go to some other county to dispose of the septic. You're not going to get that many trucks.
So are you saying
and
that?
Keep in mind, that much septic, even if you did, is only 2.8 inches.
I think it's about, I need some calculation on this, something like 13,000 average sized pools. That's a lot. 70 acre feet.
Again,
23 million gallons.
I understand that.
And if that's the case, why did you ask for 76,000 gallons per acre? And also, if you're not even testing it, then there's no limits, for example, on the nitrogens or metals.
There are limits on nitrogen. That's part of the testing. And so, again, you do not apply for an application rate based on gallons. You base it on the agronomic uptake of the crops. And you figure out the maximum amount. The number in the application is the maximum amount. That is part of the TCQ application. That is their requirement for calculation. That doesn't mean that much septic is going to be applied at the site.
So let's assume that there's an accident or somebody's hurt, because accidents do happen. And for example, the state of Florida, which I thought was also misleading, by the way, didn't have to do with money. It had to do with evidence and history of application of sewage consent not being applied properly, and runoff happening, and groundwater being contaminated. That was the reason that they banned it.
Well,
and so the next question I have is,
that's
who's liable if and when there's an accident or somebody gets hurt? Is Mr. Swenson liable, or is there something in the 503 section that says he's not liable?
I can't answer that. I don't know.
See, this is some of the things we have questions we're not getting answers to. We don't know who's testing it. We don't know who's liable for our community.
A licensed third-party testing laboratory will be the ones testing.
Have any storage facilities been acquired, or have any monies been paid, or any promises or business arrangements of any sort or any characterization with any of the neighbors in the area?
I'm not aware of it, no, sir.
Okay. Does Mr. Swenson own, operate, or is affiliated with any other septic disposal sites?
Lincoln has had a historical relationship. I don't think there's any relationship currently.
None?
None that I'm aware of.
Could we get the information as far as where the historical was? The location of the site and TC
We can ask
registration number?
Mr. Swenson, we'll find out for you and let you know.
Okay, I'd like to know. Do we know where the sewage will come from?
Just local homes.
But we don't know exactly from cradle to grave where the material that's not tested is going to originate or where it ends up.
So when the trucks come on site, there will be a person at the gate who will take a trip ticket, show the number of gallons, home that it's collected from, the hauler's name, the license number on the trucks, and then they'll show where they put the septic on the site.
It'll be a single home?
It can be one or more.
Right, because they're like 3,000 gallon trucks or something really larger, right?
It depends on the size of the septic tank.
And porta potties could be from all over the place, right?
Again, they have to have a trip ticket.
Okay. That's it for now.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have a question? Yes, if you want to step up to the microphone.
Good evening. I'm Diane Savage, and I have a question about the groundwater review. Who reviewed the groundwater situation? How was it considered? Who was in charge of it? Did you work with any of the groundwater districts?
This is April Ho. She works at the agency.
Yeah, my name's April Ho. I'm a geologist, and I was one of the people that conducted the groundwater review. And I'm sorry, I don't remember your whole question. But you want to know the process of the review?
How you reviewed the groundwater and with whom?
Okay. What we typically do is we look at published sources of information on the groundwater. So I can look at the Texas Water Development Board. They have.
I have a really good idea. Let's cut to the chase. Did you call?
Hold on,
Evergreen?
I'm sorry.
I know,
but we want to get this all recorded. Can you come back up to the microphone?
Yeah,
I'm sorry to cut you off.
I'm not as, I don't mean to question your process. I'm sure you were very thorough. I think my real question is, did you call the Evergreen Underground Water District to get any information? Because that part of Wilson County is in the Evergreen, and they would be the very first source for information that you should go to about the groundwater and the formations and that sort of thing.
I did not contact the Evergreen Groundwater Conservation.
I would like to urge the TCEQ to please contact the Evergreen when we have situations that involve the groundwater. That's why we have groundwater districts, because they are not under state control, they are under local control, and those guys know everything about the formations, how the aquifers work in all these areas. So I'm thinking that's a little bit of a hole in the approach here that you all might want to take a look at it.
Thank you. Your question, yes ma'am, would you come up to the microphone?
I'm Marianne Menning. I am executor of an adjacent landowner estate. And I found out about this meeting last Thursday by accident. Over 900 acres adjacent. And we did not know. I did not know. It was an accident that I found out. I was horrified. I called the attorney. I said, is this normal? And I called the office in Austin, the environmental, and they said, well, they're busy, and I can't, we worked on that all day today, that was today, but I can't really tell you anything about it, but go to the meeting and then you'll find out about what it is, and you could ask questions, and then you can do your comments later, written comments. If they did not end tonight.
Can I ask you, do you remember who you spoke to at the agency, or
It was
where you called?
A girl in Austin.
But do you know?
It was on this flyer that I got a copy of.
Is there a phone number on? You called the 800 line?
Yes,
then?
I did.
Okay. That was not correct information. I want to make sure follow up.
But I did not. I would have done a written comment right then had I known that. But it's hard to do a written comment about something you know nothing about.
And the other thing is,
I'm very concerned about the water issue and the contamination by that creek that runs through our property and the adjacent property.
and another thing that you mentioned was that you're the executor of the adjacent landowner.
Yes.
They went to the county tax rolls and provide
and we paid our taxes. We have updated our mailing address, everything.
If you do anything at all, we don't have that in front of us, but if you do anything at all today, whether orally or in writing, please submit the information of who you represent and where that property is, so that the agency can compare it to the landowner list that they provided us.
Well, my parents were Mr. and Mrs. Leslie Plager.
I know, we're in the informal portion. I need you to either come up with the second part, do it orally, or put it in writing for me, so it's an official part of the record, okay?
All right.
Okay.
But that's pretty pitiful, 900 and something acres.
That's why I want you to make sure it gets on formally, so that we can compare it to what they submitted to us, and make sure that they did provide us an accurate list.
Yes, ma'am. And I just wanted to piggyback on what Tara was saying there. Again, if you would come back up during the formal comment period and raise the issue of notice and the adequacy of notice, that's something that we've seen in the written comments thus far. And then your oral comments tonight during the formal comment period will be given the same weight as all written comments that we've already
I'm normally
received.
a prepared person, and I'm sorry, but it's just like you're slapped in the face. I cannot believe we had no clue.
Again, I'd ask that you please bring the issue of appropriate notice up during the formal comment period, so we have a way to address that in our written response.
Okay. And also, I would like to go on record is a question about the water district. I cannot believe the local water district, because that is one reason, as an executor, we were holding on to the property. To me, the water is the most valuable thing we have. Forget the eagle fruit. That's going to be gone in 20 years or 10 years. But water is our most valuable resource. Thank you. I'm sorry?
Could you repeat your parents' name for us?
Leslie Plager.
That's her name. What is the estate? That's the estate? Okay.
She's married. Right.
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yes, did you have a question?
Yes, ma'am. Yep, sir, I don't know your name, I don't recall your name.
Don.
You were giving, when your slides were up there, on your second slide, when it said, the state requires applications at less than agronomic rates. And yet here, in the application, it says the applicant is seeking authorization to apply domestic septage at agronomic rates, and that seems to be a conflict to me.
I didn't mean for it to be a conflict or report as a conflict. It's the application, the TCEQ evaluates these in terms of the nitrogen uptake and the economic rate of the type of crop that's being raised and going to be grown on the property. So,
but you indicated state law requires it to be less than that on your second slide.
I'll just need to double check that. I'm not sure
I'll quote it for you. A state requires application at less than economic rate. So and this implies that it can go up to the agronomic rate, so therefore there seems to be a conflict.
I appreciate that, sir. Again, what the state puts in that document is a maximum amount, not what the applicant's going to put out on the property.
Yes, sir.
Bud Reese, Gonzales County Commissioner, Precinct 4. And we border Wilson County on that end. And we had mention of the Elm Creek here. And that flows into the Sandies and the Sandies into the Guadalupe. So, being largely a rural area, we're accustomed to dealing with requirements imposed upon our livestock operations. A pollution prevention plan is required of them in order to operate. I believe there are elements in these plans that are relative to our discussion this evening. Most notably, the requirement to contain a 25-year, 24-hour storm event. Dairy, take dairy for instance.
Yes, sir.
Familiar with
That 25-year, 24-hour provision is for if you have a pond on your property. That pond has to hold that much waste from your CAFA.
Okay.
We don't have a pond. We don't have on-site storage. This is all brought in tanker codes, and then it's land applied straight away. So it's not going to be stored on site.
Okay. Can I ask you a question about the mapping up here? The line that's drawn around the property?
Yes, sir.
Is that a containment one?
That's the buffer zone, 50-foot wide buffer zone. That's correct. Setback.
Okay, so what I'm concerned about is a 24-hour storm event. What raises that when a 24-hour storm event comes apart? Well, is that going to come on down the Elm? What's left on where they're treating this sewage? Septic.
You're talking about, are you going to wash off any of the material during a large rain event?
Has that been looked at yet?
Well, of course, the application we can't have any runoff of the septage during application. If you have a real large storm event, the buffer zones and that all filter that out and provides filter and buffering to water bodies. So some of it possibly get off, you know.
So
possibly
landowners further down.
It's the same type of buffer zone that you have for your capital permits around your irrigation sites. The same type of buffer zone.
So some of that ingredients could be going down the Elm into the Sandies and all the way to the Guadalupe. And the Elm, a lot of livestock and native animals water there.
Just like
those
from all the
impurities could be there too.
Yes, sir. Just like from all the other properties. That's right.
Well, I'd like TCEQ to look into that a little bit closer to make sure of that. And the goal being to prevent the pond of containment from discharging to the water to the state.
Again,
unless there is a catastrophic event.
Right. Again, there's no on-site containment of the septic.
No on-site pond.
And no on-site pond. It's just all brought on site by truck from the source, and it's distributed at that.
I understand that. And there might be 2 trucks a day. There might be 50. But the 24-hour event could happen to have that stuff pushed on down the creek, across the county road into Gonzales County. That's what I'm interested in. I would expect your industry would have the similar stormwater discharge requirements, and you would like to know, and I would like to know what they are and be assured that they are provide a similar level of protection in the event of a harsh rainfall.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Anybody else have a question? Yes, ma'am. Can you step up to the mic?
I'm Joanne Story. I live across the street from Mr. Swenson, and you should be ashamed. And I've never seen, from all of you up here, it seems like the landowners do not have an advocate here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The water runs all downhill. We have the wonderful Elm Creek and Alligator Creek on our property, and it's just a few hundred feet. We have fresh fish. We have a well that we drink out of. We have cattle operation very close. So the question is the liability of each of you, because you've been warned. I've told you. And if that water comes on my property and we test it, I'm a nurse with public health experience from the University of Minnesota, Bachelor of Science degree. My husband's a physician. My son's an MBA in biology. You cannot believe how we've studied this. And I've told you now, so you are liable for whatever comes on my property. Thank you.
I'm Dr. Kathy Booth, and thank you, Maria, for the praise. I'm the superintendent of schools, and next to where this would actually be in our school district, 2 miles from our schools. And I intended to save my comments for public comment, but I have a question for you. I have 75 school-aged children that live within a mile of this site. And as innocuous as you're trying to make it sound, it has to be away from water and it has to be away from these other things, and you can't have cattle on it. How are you going to keep my children off of it?
Well, I mean, the property's not open to public access.
I understand that. These are school-aged children. They cannot read. They may not speak English. They may be chasing a stray dog. How are you going to protect my children?
It only would be the people that are on site on the property at the time that we see if there's any trespassers on the property. And
24/7? It's not fenced, right?
No,
These
it's
children
all
are
fenced.
within 1 fence for children, stray dogs. They're within 1 mile of this property. We should be ashamed of ourselves. There is no economic gain to those 75 children.
Is there anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Margaret Davis, and I'm wondering what, no one's brought up the question of how they're going to control the odor that comes from this. The prevailing winds that comes from the south come straight toward my house. Not only do we receive the dust off of the county road, but I guarantee you we will receive significant odor from this. You can't tell me you're going to spread that out and there's no odor. So what is going to be done to take care of this problem?
Sure. Part of the treatment is a pH to at least 12.
So we're going back to where you had the outhouses and you lined it. And that's all you're going to do.
This is one of several approved methods by the EPA and TCEQs to raise the pH of the septic to at least 12.
How long does that
12
take?
for at least 30 minutes. And then
So in that 30 minutes I get to smell it.
No, it's all done inside the truck on the haul. It's not done on site, it's not exposed to the atmosphere until it's discharged from the back of the
The
truck.
lime is not put out on the ground.
No, ma'am, it's all done within the transport of the truck itself.
Okay. My next question is, if animals cannot graze this, and yet this is for a hay production, aren't they going to? So how does this equate to them eating the hay? Is it then okay?
Yes.
I mean, if they can't graze it, then yet you're going to feed it.
So the 30-day requirement for no grazing is more of a protection from direct contact, not from eating the hay.
But they received all this stuff that's on the ground today, and they're going to.
In the studies I've read regarding deer, small animals, cattle, all show, yes ma'am, they show that this is not only a safe program, but actually for deer and other wildlife, it's beneficial. It raises the protein in the grasses.
This is private property. Nobody's going to, Nixon's going to be hunting on this property. Thank you very much.
Question, this address on the application, is this Mr. Swenson's address?
Thank you.
11407 Farmer Market Road, 1625 Austin, Texas? Okay, so he lives in Austin, right?
Lives outside Austin.
Does he live in Nixon?
No, I'm aware. No, ma'am.
So he just has a feed store there, his business is there, but he does not live in Nixon?
No, that's correct. He does not live in Nixon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Larry Wiley. I'm County Commissioner of Wilson County, Precinct 4. This area is in my precinct. I'm not going to be nearly as eloquent as these other folks were. I just want to speak to some concerns for the county. First of all, the Evergreen Water District really should have been consulted. There is a culvert that goes into that property off of Elm Creek that when we get rain, and it has rained before, I've been here and seen it, I promise you, washes out. There's a lot of water that comes through there. We're talking about optimum situations as far as putting this down, having it dry, having it not be a problem. God works in mysterious ways, and you cannot always assume that things are going to go exactly as is. We have a lot of development in Wilson County right now, and in Gonzales County, and lots of trucks. You talk about the fact that it is not or will not be an impact on the infrastructure. With the Eagle Ford here, with the number of trucks that we have, any addition is an impact on the infrastructure, particularly when you're in a county that, well, all of our counties, I speak for Bud, I think too, that our budgets are maintenance budgets and they're not designed for the kind of impact that we have. I read an article recently about Karnes County, and one of the statements I remember is the county judge there said, well, we're doing pretty well. We have $18 million in the bank, but we have $100 million in road damage. And so that's an issue that I think we need to consider. And the drainage issue is quite an issue as well. We're also, from an economic standpoint, very much a developing county. And a 50-foot barrier may be what is required. I really personally don't think that that's going to filter it. And you may put lime in it, and that may diminish some of the fragrance. I don't know what it'll do for the flies, but I know from, we just redid our subdivision regulations not long ago. And I won't get into that, except to say that one of the things that we have to watch as a county whenever we're looking at subdivisions is to make certain that there's not something that we don't allow someone to do that might hinder a piece of property from being a subdivision. And that's called a taking. And so if there is something that might fall into that, then we have to have public hearings and so forth. I'm not saying that County Road 483 tomorrow is going to be paved and it's going to, be a subdivision, but you're really putting at risk the potential economic development of the area. You're putting at risk folks like this lady that might want to sell their property or find another use for it. I really wish you'd reconsider this. Thank you.
I will return to the mic in just a moment. I want to face Mr. Swenson, because I've never seen him, and he is supposedly one of my neighbors. And a lot of these people in the audience are my neighbors. Like those people right there, I can see the front door of my house. And I talk to her often, eye to eye, but neighbors care about one another. It is a community. We care about each other's livelihood. We care about each other's marriages, our children, our education, our future, our dreams. I have noticed no emotion from this man who is coming to my neighborhood. He hasn't looked at me, but I've looked at him. I think that's just an important point to me, because my neighbors talk to me. They look me in the eye. He is not my neighbor. He has made no effort to come forward in my community that I know of. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But this neighbor has made no effort to console me as a mother that this is a good idea. And we have 5 men. Are any of you mothers yet? Mothers have a different perspective when it comes to taking care of their children. Maybe you are, I don't know.
am. Tim's going to be a father in a couple of weeks.
I wish we could talk about the things that are great instead of the things that threaten our families. I'm shaky. And I'm your equal. I have intense emotion about what is going on right here. That there are 5 people before me. And teachers, I am a teacher, graduate of Texas A&M. Teachers know that the visibility of what we're seeing here affects the outcome of what we speak of. If Mr. Swenson was sitting up here facing us each time, I think he would understand what the neighbors are saying. Teachers, is that true?
Yes.
If you look at your students, they will understand so much more, especially if you look them in the eye and they know that you care about them. Very profound. I'm 54 and I've been teaching for a long time. And I've worked with all kinds of kids, from those who are in trouble with the law to those who become engineers. I know how people work. This, to me, is so one-sided. Maybe this is how it's been done all along. But it is absurd that the neighbors come in and face you. I just don't understand that. And if that is a policy that is done at all times, I think something should be done to change that. I'd like to know what percentage of the land in Texas is used for this type of process. Because if it's so good, I hope you don't say you don't know the answer to that. That says so much. If you can't tell me the percentage of Texas land, and specifically ranch land and farmland, that is used in this way. If that has not been figured out, to me, to even be close to fair, which this is not, we would know that, and you would willingly extend the time that people have promised to us to explain our concerns. There's a discrepancy between the lady that called last week, and she said she had more time, but y'all are saying, well, she's wrong. Well, that, to me, that's not my problem. That's the agency's problem. And when it comes up again and again with many different people, you might be wrong about that.
So we do not collect the statistics of how much land is on the, we have many applications come in. There's many applications that are processed and approved and issued, but it's not per acreage for the state of Texas.
I figured you would tell me that. I imagine you can tell me specifics about the percentage of how you spend your income, which has to do with you. But I'm talking about how my family makes a living. My family has cattle. Do any of you raise cattle or horses? Quarter horses, thoroughbreds, Arabians, very, very valuable animals. Do any of you have a horse or cow that you take care of, even if you don't live on the property? Say the cow is in Montana. Do you have one?
No, ma'am, I sold one.
No, ma'am, I don't.
You don't. Sir?
No, ma'am. I don't.
Sir?
No.
Sir? No. Do you own cattle or horses?
To answer your earlier question, I'm sorry, I didn't get your name earlier.
My name is Laura Cook.
Thank you. Ms. Cook, I asked the staff to look into how many facilities were in the surrounding counties before this meeting. But what they told me is that the GBRA has a facility in Guadalupe County for Class B sludge. The City of Gonzales has one in Gonzales County for Class B sludge. There's a facility in DeWitt County for domestic septic. There's a facility in Guadalupe County for Spring Hills WSC. In Guadalupe County for Canyon Regional Water Authority. One for Shirt Seguin Local Government Corporation. And one for the Gonzales County WSC.
And all of this land that you're talking about is using the same process?
The land applying sludge for septic, yes, ma'am.
Okay. So it would be a reasonable thing to do to communicate with us just what you're talking about. For example, somebody just a few moments ago asked about the economic impact of this. I do not know one businessman in this community or woman that doesn't know exactly what they're going to hope to earn off of their business dealings. A business person doesn't do that. Is it reasonable to ask what he gains from this?
I have not seen any calculations of what he's going to make, if he's going to make, how many people he's contacted, whether he has any contracts with. I don't know any of that information.
Is it reasonable to ask what this man will gain from this?
Well, of course, you don't do anything in life, business-wise, without being for an economic gain. But also with this type of material. I know everybody laughs about this, but it is used as fertilizer. It's been used as fertilizer in this country for 150 years. It's used all over the world.
Again, remember, none of you have cattle or horses. My family is beginning the horse business. My daughter is, in fact, they just put a horse down, a quarter horse that she has had since, I have to count the years back, elementary school, that was recently bred with another quarter horse. We're talking very expensive. This is not like a dog in your backyard. Very expensive. The horse had to be put down because of the questionable food that she ate. Right now they're doing an autopsy on the animal. And may I add, we also lost the colt. These are things that we deal with all the time that do not touch your lives. My daughter had to see her beloved animal that she competed on put down, and the foal that would come from that horse and the investment with that is lost a month from due. The mother was put down, the baby died too. And I will tell you later on what A&M says about that, but we know that the food is part of what could be the problem. There were 3 different things that they're looking at. One being rabies, one being the food source being contaminated, and then there was another one I would have to think a little bit more about. So I would ask you to look on our side of the fence as men and women who do not raise cattle and do not take care of horses. and maybe never even have touched a horse. They're pretty special. I would think it's a reasonable request with all the land that you mentioned that you could find out what percentage of our area is covered with this investment, as you call it. No one has told me, and especially my neighbor, because when my neighbors care about me and they know that there's something that's really good for me, they will do their darnest to convince me to hear what they're saying, because I am maybe ignorant of what they're trying to say. There is nothing in this for me. I guess I missed those comments. What is in it for me? That is not part of what you're talking about. And to not be able to say what is in it for him. That to me, that's very unneighborly. I think you should be able to tell me that instead of discount it that it's not important. It is very important. If money were not a factor, what do you do it then? What, does it benefit him then? No businessman does that.
I know you're looking at me because I'm a facilitator, but you do understand, I'm sure you do, that TCQ, the gentleman has come in, he submitted his application, we're obligated to review it, it's under technical review. He's chosen these two to represent him at the meeting, and those questions that you have are with regard to him and his business choices, and that's not something
that works very nicely for the little landowner that has, you know, 900 acres? Can you imagine taking care of 900 acres? Is your house on 900 acres? Are you concerned about the drainage? Do you live in my neighborhood? No response. You are not the same neighbor. You do not understand what this is going to do to my community. Please, pretend I'm your wife up here. You know exactly what your wife would say. We're just talking about children back here. That we're going to have a fence around this area. All of you have children or about to have children. Is that true?
Children and grandchildren.
Okay. Do your grandchildren always stay in the area that you tell them to stay in?
No.
So why would we want to endanger the children in our school district, knowing full well kids go out and you may have a guard there, but children get into things. They're curious. They want to go look at nature. Would you want your children to be beside that?
Mr. Cook, many of us came to enter things on the comments at the end of this, so they can go on record, and we appreciate the opportunity.
My last question is, I understand that he has a mobile home of his own that is on the property. I'm interested to know if he lives 24/7 in this trailer on this commercial property, because I know that if he were living there, then he's really saying that it's a good place to be. And no one said anything about, yes, there's a trailer there. Is it being used? And why are you pointing that out to us? Is there something that I'm missing?
There were several questions there. I guess the first answer is no, he doesn't live there. Is it being used? My understanding that it is. And the third question is why is it important? Because there's setback requirements or exemption setback requirements in residences. So I just pointed that out. Okay.
What is, you're going to have to explain that to me in English. I'm sorry.
Can you explain the last
part?
Okay,
sure.
Thank
you very much. TCQ requirements for buffer zones between single-family residences and application areas. That's why I pointed it out.
Let's take a quick break, and then we'll go into formal comment.